Make that big boss less special. It ain't no game, but they saying welcome to the second level. Second level. Second level gaming. Second level.
Hello, Internet, and welcome back, or welcome to the official Level 2 podcast, episode 48. We're officially having a midlife crisis here. My name's Keegan, one half of Level 2 Gamers, hanging out with Bangers and Mash himself.
What do I have to do to make
Tom.
you stop doing that?
Nothing. It's going to keep going.
You're just going to keep doing it.
I said, as soon as you said you didn't like it, you know I'm going to keep it going. I'm going to adjust my mic here real quick, because it's a little cattywampus. I got to aim it up a little bit.
Cattywampus.
It's got some dickery going on.
So I'm going to call you cattywampus.
But how you doing? You good?
I'm good.
We watched some videos in between. Yeah, it's chilly down here.
Yeah, I'm cold.
We have no dogs, hopefully, this time. No electrical outages. It's been a fun week.
It's been a weird week.
It's been a weird week.
Yeah,
we cut Indie Please That Details. If you didn't know or you didn't realize what happened, at the end of Indie Please That Details, we heard a zzz, zzz, and ironically, everything but like our recording stuff went off. Your computer went off. Your printer went off. Everything just shut down. And then behind us is the outlet, behind the studio with the green screen. There's an outlet back there, and apparently there's a dead spider that committed suicide, and that's what it's been. And then the next episode,
I have no complaints.
The next episode, your wife is homesick today, so she's taking her puppies out, and Cora came down. I don't think you noticed, but Cora came down and was chilling here.
I feel like I saw a flash of light down there, but then she was like,
she was chilling here for a good maybe 30 seconds, and didn't realize what was going on, and then she brushed against my leg, and I was like, okay. And then she went back up, went outside, and then when it came back in, came back down. So we had some doggies.
Some puppies yesterday.
We had a thing.
Right now, though, the coast is clear.
Yeah, for now.
For the next hour, we'll see what happens.
But let's jump into this and see how much of a shit show this one will be.
Well, let's explain it first. I mean, basically, this is our standard podcast. It's just me and you, being me and you. We don't talk about indie games. We might. We don't talk about VR games.
We might.
There's no focus, really.
The focus is literally pick a topic that we want to discuss.
Yeah, both pick a topic and then a weird thing and like a segment in the middle, and that's how it runs down. If you previously listened, you know that. If you haven't, then hi, welcome. How are you? Nice to see you.
So my topic for this week, there's been a little. I was going to bring it up last week, but then I thought IGN was more important than this topic because it's different.
Okay.
But the topic this week is Star Wars Battlefront. Have you heard about Star Wars Battlefront 2 specifically?
I have heard of it.
Have you heard of the controversy surrounding it?
I have.
Have you heard the numbers that have come out since the controversy surrounding it has happened?
The numbers?
Yes.
What numbers are you specifically referring to, sir?
Star Wars Battlefront 2 is making history, and I'm glad.
Okay. You gonna get to the point here, buddy?
Yeah, I'm glad. We're making history.
You're making history. All right.
Again, UK, because that tends to be where we get our shit from, apparently.
Yeah, apparently everything is UK-based.
Well, they probably...
But they don't watch us, though. Come on.
They probably released their sales numbers, though, before everybody else.
I guess.
Top 10 UK sales chart. Star Wars Battlefront 2 didn't finish in its debut week. I'm going to read some stuff here.
Owned EA.
Star Wars Battlefront 2 launched on PS4, Xbox One, and PC amid much controversy last week, and now it has failed to top the UK chart for its first week on sale. The sci-fi shooter was narrowly beaten by Call of Duty World War II in the game's third week of availability, according to Sales Monitor Chart Track. What's more, GameIndustry.biz reports that Battlefront 2's UK physical sales are down 61% compared to the 2015 reboot Star Wars Battlefront. Some of that shortfall may be recovered in increasing digital sales, but it's unlikely enough units have been sold over PSN, Xbox Live, and Origin to make up that gulf. Battlefront 2 has been shrouded in controversy since its beta in October. Fans accuse the game's multiplayer progression system of being confusing, pay to win. Before EA tweaked how it worked out and later removed microtransactions altogether, albeit temporarily. The company's stock price has fallen. And then this is from GameSpot. We've awarded the game a 6 out of 10 in our Battlefront 2 review in progress. In contrast, Call of Duty World War II launched 2 weeks prior to critical acclaim and commercial success. During its opening weekend, the game sold twice as many copies as Infinite Warfare, which Infinite Warfare didn't sell that well.
Well, they sold twice as many copies because they stopped using fucking jetpacks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It didn't sell that well.
For 7 years to do that.
Did during the same period last year, taking in over $500 million in that period. Microtransactions are coming to Call of Duty World War II, though they've been delayed, so lingering server issues could be fixed. And I'm not going to keep going after that, but they've got the charts. So it didn't it didn't finish number 1, which most people no, it charted. It just wasn't number 1.
Okay.
So let me tell you why I'm glad.
Okay.
Let me explain this.
You
so
got a big shit-eating
I
want to
yeah. I'm going to talk about 2 things.
Sure.
And they're going to be in a silo, and I know gaming's not siloed, but I want to talk about Star Wars Battlefront 2 as a game.
Okay.
I have not played it.
Okay.
You've not played it.
No.
I know people who have played it.
Okay.
I know people who haven't played it.
Do you know one,
That's
right?
a good start.
Yeah. Great so far.
So the people that I talked to that have played it, because I wanted to get both sides of the coin. Like, why did you buy it? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What do you think of it? And a lot of the things that I've heard is it's a great game. The campaign is amazing. It fixed a lot of the issues in the first game. The game itself is a lot of fun. The game itself is really good. The progression system is broken. That's kind of the gist. So I've had many people say they love it. They have no regret for their decision in buying it. People are overblowing this whole pay-to-win thing. They're overblowing the microtransactions thing, all this kind of stuff. And that's fair. You're allowed to have your opinion on a game. That's the way it is. The other side of that is people not buying the game, and this is why I'm glad it's making history that it has dropped 61% in sales because of the microtransaction stuff. So it's funny because I was not going to pick up the game, not because of microtransactions, but because the first game I felt burned by, and I've said that many times. I felt like I didn't get
dropped 120 on that.
Yeah, I didn't get my money worth out of that first game, so I was going to get this game on a sale, and somebody was like, why don't you pick it up now? It fixed everything you wanted. I get that, but it's out of principle. I'm not going to buy full price. So the reason I like this is this article in particular. How many times as gamers as a whole yell and bitch about things, but then we don't do anything to fix it? The fact that this did not chart, the fact that Disney, so the only reason microtransactions don't exist right now is because Disney, the guys who own Star Wars, came out and said, we don't want gambling in our games. We don't want the bad press, especially when a Star Wars movie's coming out in a month.
Yeah.
They're like, we don't want any of this. They're the reason DICE/EA took out the microtransactions.
I didn't know that.
It was not EA coming out and saying do it. It was the CEO of Disney saying, you're going to do this, or I'm sure they're like, you're going to lose the license.
Yeah.
Which, Star Wars is a pretty big license.
They fucking deserve to lose the license. Let's be honest. Because the problem with this, they're holding it hostage.
Yeah.
Because they're like, there's literally nowhere else you can go to get a good Star Wars game.
Because they've got exclusivity.
Yeah.
So the reason I like this, and the kind of the take I want to take on this is not. I don't think the game is garbage. I don't think the game is bad.
I don't think so.
The reviews that I've seen have GameSpot gave it a 6. Most reviews have been probably an 8-ish.
GameSpot probably gave it a 6 to send a message.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah. Most reviews though I've seen about an 8, which is about what I expected for the game. The big complaints are the progression system, the online system, which we all know about. But what I really like is the fact that the phrase, show it with your wallet type thing. Like, if you don't like it,
speak with your wallet.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I was trying. I couldn't think of what the phrase was. Speak with your wallet. If you don't like what they're doing, what's going to get to them the most? Don't buy it. But then the issue here with this instance is their microtransactions. So, do you buy the game because you like the game and then you just don't buy the microtransactions, or how do you handle that?
Well, the problem is, as far as I understand, is that the game is like so unfair and unforgiving in trying to get what you would normally be able to get relatively, like, simply just through progression. So it's not like, the main characters that you're, like the hero characters, like, it takes, someone did the math on it. They were like, it takes a ridiculous amount of time and hours to unlock these things when, unless you buy them. So it's not like it's, you work a little bit, you grind a little bit, then you get your character. It's like, it's basically like near impossible to get all of them.
So that is kind of true and kind of not at this point.
Okay.
So the latest news is, it used to be the thing was to unlock one character is 40 hours of gameplay. To unlock the whole everything was 2,100 hours. Ugh. Which nobody's going to play a game that long. Unless it's fucking World of Warcraft or Skyrim or something like that. But they decreased the cost of the heroes. They've also decreased what you get. At the end of the campaign, you got a giant thing for finishing the campaign. But everybody I've talked to that has played the game, and again, I want to go from I'm doing a secondhand account from somebody who's played it firsthand, has said it's not been an issue yet. And there's people that have played it for 2 hours. I know people that have already played it for 25, 30 hours. And they're like, I've yet to run into that thing where I felt like, I died because I didn't have something, or somebody had something cooler than I did, or B, I felt like I couldn't play the hero I wanted to, or I couldn't do this because I was locked out of it. There have been some instances on internet, then I can't kind of confirm, but there's been reports of people not being able to play the hero versus hero mode because the heroes they had unlocked had already been picked.
I had read that.
I have an issue with that. I don't know if it's true. I
think it is.
I can't confirm, but if that is true, that's probably the shittiest thing they could have done.
Yeah, I think I remember reading something about that. I think it was like an actual article, not just like a comment or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was.
That I have an issue with.
That's the problem.
But again, getting back to kind of the focus I want to put for this is I really love the fact that this game did not debut number one. A Star Wars game should easily sell millions of copies.
Especially one that had the marketing push behind it that this
one. Well, the other thing, so there was I can't remember who I was watching the other day. It might have been Colin Moriarty or somebody, but he said, so Star Wars Battlefront 1, for as bad as it was, I use bad loosely there, for as shallow as it was.
Shallow as it
shallow as it was, sold 14 million units in its first 6 months.
Yeah.
If you made that game again with, even if you kept fucking star cards, like people didn't like star cards, they kept the star cards in the end, but you kept star cards. You kept that progression system. You kept all that. You add the campaign, and you add maybe you tweak a couple of the multiplayer modes so they don't play all the same. That would have been fine. That, like, to me, that's like Destiny 2, which is Destiny 1.5 in my opinion. Star Wars Battlefront 1.5. It's the one we should have gotten initially, and it would have sold 20, 30, 40 million units easily because Star Wars hype is everywhere, and that's why Disney put their foot down and said, we don't want this. So I find it very, very interesting, and I'd love to know who's making this decision, because put the microtransactions. Everybody's going to blame EA, the publisher, and say it's the publisher doing it and all this. And
well, it's not Disney. We know that.
Well, no, but it's also the developer has to make a progression system around microtransactions, so they're aware of it.
Yeah, no, developers push buttons when of what other people tell them to do. I think in a studio,
I don't believe that. There are some
indie developers, no, but in a company the size of EA, where you have so much bottom line talk, especially with a game this size and scale. I mean, how many people do you think working on this game? You think any of those devs got to decide if microtransactions?
So you want to hear something
not?
that they came out and said after they took out the microtransactions?
Sure.
EA has come out and said to their investors, because their stock price dropped pretty significantly for a company they are, that they are not set to lose any money on Star Wars Battlefront. It's not going to affect the bottom line at all.
Then don't fucking do it then.
So, but have you heard Rockstar coming out and saying every game they have going forward is going to have that system? Rockstar's come out and said they're going to have a continual pay system of some sort.
Yeah, but that's the same. That's like shark cards. That's
Correct.
Different.
Correct. And where I'm getting at this point is I have no issue, and I've said this before, I've no issue with loot boxes. I have no issue with microtransactions in games. As long as they're done right. And I'm really, really, really happy, and this is where the I'm glad part comes in, that there's two mindsets here. One, this is a publisher and developer finally understanding of like how far they can go with greed and be like, stop, don't do this. And I like that there's been the pushback of like, okay, we've been cool up to this point, and EA gets a lot of heat because it's EA, and I think some of that's fair, some of it's not. Like, I feel like if this was Bethesda or if this was Project CD Red, the backlash would be a little bit less, but I still think it would still be there.
Did you hear?
Yep.
Can I chime in real quick about Project CD Red?
Yep.
The 2077 thing? Because one of the major outlets posted that they were going to be doing that. That they were going to be doing microtransactions. And fucking Project CD Red replied directly to them in a tweet and said, fuck no. Like, basically think Witcher 3... in a cyberpunk setting, everything will be free, everything will be unlocked from the start. Like, no, we're not doing that.
There are microtransactions.
They came out and categorically denied it.
Do you want to say, I can show you the quote. There are microtransactions in the game, but they said
Cyberpunk 2077?
Yes, but they said it's not going to affect gameplay.
Well,
it's going to be cosmetic. But there are... I'm just saying, I want to make sure we get it correct, that there are microtransactions in the game.
Right.
If we're setting the record straight, there's microtransactions in the game, but it's not affecting gameplay.
Right. It's cosmetic.
I just want to make sure...
No one gives a shit about cosmetics.
Correct. I just want to make sure, though, that we...
It's not putting up a boundary between you and a part of the game.
Correct.
It's just all for... It's like a fucking swimsuit in a Japanese game.
I just want to make sure that we got it correct for
that's fine.
people watching.
Verbiage is important.
So...
I'll let you have that.
But yeah, I'm really excited that this is a thing because... Again, I don't have an issue with GTA. I bought many shark cards in GTA. I've bought many loot boxes in Overwatch, and I've said many times on this show, I have no issue with Overwatch loot boxes for multiple reasons. One, there's a chance I'm going to get money out of it when it comes to in-game currency. The problem I have with EA is, like, you could spend $100 and still not get what you want because there's so many things that are in loot boxes. They're filled with junk. And David had a good point last night with Overwatch. He's like, I don't care about sprays. I was like, yeah, but some sprays are cool. Like, there's a chance I can get a cool spray, and I know 9 times out of 10 I won't get a cool spray, but there's always that chance. And to me, I get enough cool stuff in Overwatch that I don't feel ripped off. But I really love that the fact that people spoke with their wallet, the fact that this is the thing. Microtransactions are coming back to Star Wars Battlefront. It's only temporary, so I give it like 2-3 months. They'll be back.
It was funny the way they did that as well, though, because it was such an obvious ploy. Like when they came out and said, due to feedback or whatever, we're gonna remove microtransactions and then they'll return sometime in the future. Like, it was literally like they released that statement, what was it, like a week before the game came out? And everyone was just like, this is
2 days.
Yeah, it was a couple days. It was like, this is just their last-ditch effort for you to buy the game because it looks like they're saying no microtransactions, but it literally says at the bottom, they'll be back. So, like, don't do it. And it was this huge boycott online for it. But it's interesting. You remember when do you remember the no pre-order, like 2017 no pre-order thing? Where everyone was like, no one pre-order this year.
And everybody's pre-ordering.
Yeah, and everyone's still doing it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I like this.
Yeah.
And, like, again, we've said it many times that at some point you're going to piss enough people off that's going to become a movement, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's what this is becoming. Again, I feel like because it's EA, it's becoming more and more echo chamber than it would be if it was Bethesda or if it was Project City Red or whatever.
It, though. This is the problem. Like,
and I think, yes, but I also think that EA, the issue a lot of people have with EA is they feel very corporate-y. They do a lot of business bottom line.
Yes, but also they do it in a bad way. Like, they've been literally voted one of the worst companies in the world, like, multiple times, up there with Comcast.
But do you also think that's because gamers are?
I don't think gamers are voting.
Are you sure?
Do you remember voting?
I don't know who votes for that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
I don't know what that's based off of, so I can't say.
Like, Comcast and stuff are always the top of those lists, but EA are always close to there. So there's something that they're doing that is shady as shit, like on a pretty continual basis. Again, I don't hate EA. I like it when they do stuff good. Like,
I love when people like boycott EA, and then you see the list of games like Madden, which again I have opinions on Madden or NBA Live or I don't know what's that one game that's coming out next year? The 2 dudes in the prison.
Like No Way Out or something. I don't know.
One Way Out.
So, yeah.
So like they do cool things. Like Unravel was EA. Like that's when people like boycott EA. I'm like, well, just be careful. But again, buy what you want to support. And I'm all for people who have bought the game and enjoyed it. I don't want to tell people not to buy it because I personally think it's. I didn't buy it again not because of microtransactions. I didn't buy it because of how I felt about the first game, and I felt like I didn't get enough money's worth. But if somebody felt like, hey, I played the first game, I loved it, or maybe they skipped the first game and they want to get in this one, I have no issue with that. I have no issue with people doing microtransactions.
Do you have an issue with how they treated Visceral?
No.
You don't?
No. You know why I don't have an issue with how they treated Visceral? Because we don't know the full story. There's no way, because what we've read is basically they shut down Visceral because...
Visceral weren't the first company they did that to, though. There's a literal graveyard of companies that EA has picked up, bled dry, and kicked out to the curb. There's like 8, maybe more.
But it's their prerogative as the owner of the company.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
It's still shitty, though. I know you're Mr. fucking business.
I know, but
shitty,
that's where I get it from. I mean,
like,
how many times...
Ethically, it's shitty.
How many times has big companies bought up somebody, took the IPs, and then shoved everything away? Look at Microsoft with Nokia. Microsoft bought Nokia, they got the IPs, and then they sold Nokia to Withings now. I think owns them. So, I mean, it's the way it is. As much as it... I agree, from a human standpoint, it's shitty. From a business standpoint, I don't understand. I don't have an issue with it from a business standpoint because they're buying. It's like with Disney buying Star Wars. I guarantee you, Star Wars games and Star Wars experiences are going to be different because Disney owns them versus if they're on their own.
Well, true.
There's going to be, to me, there's going to be.
But
I don't
Disney
say,
is treating that franchise with respect. That's the difference. Is that EA doesn't treat its franchises with respect. That's the way that I see it. Like Disney got Marvel, Disney got Star Wars, and we've had
But-
incredible Marvel movies, incredible Star Wars movies and experiences.
But do you think they're exploiting it? That's the other thing,
No, I
then,
don't.
too. Because if you look at how many Marvel movies there have been, how many TV shows there have been,
No, but they can make
it's a cash cow.
as long as they're good. It doesn't matter. Like, people want that. They want more, but they want it fair, and they don't want it to be something that they feel like they're not getting what they're paying for. And that's the problem with EA, is that, like, I believe, like, when you go see The Force Awakens or whatever the fuck it's called, the new one.
Last Jedi.
Thank you. But if you go see The Last Jedi, that you're going to get a solid Star Wars movie because Disney care about Star Wars and they want it to be a solid movie. They give the director, they give the producers, they give them everything they need. They put it out there. You're not going to feel shortchanged by that movie. And you may disagree with some story elements or whatever, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. When it comes to EA, though, I feel like they don't respect the franchises at all. Like, they've ditched so many mid-release Star Wars games that were like being made. They had Dead Space was one of their biggest franchises ever. It's the only real like horror title they had that was like performing really, really well, and they just fucked Visceral in the ass and threw them to the curb. So it's like,
well, when you say performing,
like,
it's commercially performing well or critically performing well, because those are two different
Dead
things.
Space were both.
Was it? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
for
what
sure.
it is.
Dead
for
Space was like space Resident Evil. Like, everyone fucking
just
loved
because it's that doesn't mean
No,
again, that's critical acclaim versus commercial
it
success.
It was commercial. They were commercial
because commercial successes. I mean,
it had there was 3 games.
Because let's
had
talk about,
enough
like Horizon.
commercial success to make 3.
If Horizon is a great game, but it didn't sell, they're not going to make another Horizon.
That's fine, but they made 3 Dead Spaces.
Yeah.
So that's commercial success, I would think. The third one wasn't as great as the first.
I was going to say franchise fatigue, that kind of thing, though, too, is the other thing to keep in mind.
This is one thing, but at the same time, like, you know, you get franchise fatigue on something like that. You don't turn around and just kick it to the curb. You say, all right, what do we do different? You do what Ubisoft does. You say, okay, Assassin's Creed, franchise fatigue, big time. What do we do? And they go
look at Mega Man. Nintendo's
Origins.
got franchises, Metroid, things that are packed
so
away.
I don't think it's necessarily like I get from the business hat perspective that you're coming from, that it makes sense for EA to kind of try and, you know, make money,
because
they're a company,
their goal is to maximize income.
Of course,
that's their ultimate goal.
But it's the way they treat
I agree.
the gamers as well, not just the companies.
I feel so the way I look, the other perspective I was going to bring up with this, and I kind of feel like this could be a way, because this is, again, the other side of the business hat, is, okay, EA came out with the Star Wars Battlefront. They did it with Star Wars because they knew people would buy Star Wars still, so it wasn't as big of a backlash. I mean, it was a big backlash, but it's a double-edged sword, because it's a big backlash because it's Star Wars, but people are still going to buy it because it's Star Wars. So they came out, they made this really shitty system. People are going to bitch about it. The next Star Wars game is going to have a less shitty system. People are going to be okay with it because of how bad this system was.
See, the thing that bothers me the most about this whole thing, and like EA aside, is that they had a really good game. Like every showing they had of Star Wars Battlefront,
everything was good up until like 2 weeks before.
Literally, like,
Yeah,
that's what I'm
it's
saying.
like, oh,
Like,
yeah.
literally, everyone was already gonna buy your fucking game. It was gonna be top of the charts. It was gonna be a standout success that you could be proud of. But someone at that company, and I wish I knew who it was so I could slap them
sure
in
it's a
their
group of
fucking
people.
face. Yeah, probably. A table full of old white guys said, "Hey, how do we milk this more?" And that's what pisses me off, because like they had a really well done Star Wars game that everyone was pumped for. The multiplayer looked brilliant, the single player looked brilliant, the graphics were incredible. They had amazing showcases of it. I was considering buying it, which is like, for me, like, you know what I mean? And then they just go and shit on it for no good reason other than they want more money. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of microtransactions. And well, microtransactions that are
Abusive.
that are abusive and force the players to do something other than cosmetic goods.
So riddle me this, because this is another argument people bring up for this.
Go for it.
AAA games have been $60 for however many years it's been now. Since I remember N64 games were $60. I don't remember the SNES and all
It doesn't seem to matter what console it is. It's always $60.
Yeah. Would you pay more? Say, let's throw a number. Let's say, would you pay $100 per game if everything was included?
No. Because it should be included already.
Even though the budgets for these games are going up. That's where a lot of this is coming from. They're paying more money to make a better experience.
But if it's a better experience, it'll sell more.
Not necessarily, because you have a finite number of units.
No, they could always make more units.
No, no
talking about
consoles.
consoles? Okay.
You have a finite number of people, so say.
Well, you don't outweigh your own ambition. That's a business decision. If you know you only have so many,
And so is making microtransactions as a business decision.
but if you know you only have so many units on the market that you could potentially sell this game to, then you don't ambitionize. That doesn't sound like the right word.
But so
you don't get overly ambitious with your budget to the point where you can't make your money back.
So what if now then we make a game, say it's a Star Wars game, since that's the franchise we're talking about. Star Wars game that is what EA says is a $60 game, and it's less than what we've had in the last few years. That's going to cause a big backlash because people are like, oh, we had this before, this before, this before, this before, and people aren't going to do it. So if you tell people to cut back on their budget, they're going to cut back on their budget. But then people have such high expectations for things that we can't cut back on our budgets because we set ourselves up to. It's the Skyrim. I talked about it on Skyrim.
Do you think though that if EA had not fucked around with microtransactions on this, do you think they would have made their money back?
I don't know how much they paid for the license. That's the thing. I don't know how much the license is and all that.
That aside, like obviously, like just give me a ballpark.
Would they be profitable?
Think they would have sold enough to be profitable off of this game?
I think they would have been profitable. Yes.
So there you go.
Do I think that they're profitable off every game? No. And do I think the big games like this eat up and help fund those other games? Yes. So if you're looking at the company, you can't. Again, I siloed it before, but you can't silo everything. So, say Unravel comes out. I don't know how much Unravel it sold, but let's just say it sold for a loss because it took, say, again, numbers. These numbers are not real. These are figments that I'm throwing out there. $2 million to produce. It made $1 million. Somewhere, something in EA has got to make that extra $1 million up. That's where Star Wars comes in. That's where
then EA should
Madden
stop
comes
publishing
in.
games that they don't think will sell.
But then you're going to get yourself to the point where you're going to have the same games repeated over and over and over again. And
For a company
game
like
devs aren't
EA,
gonna like that.
that's fine. That's what I want. Like, if I go to EA if I want a sports game or if I want a particular franchise that they do that's well, like Star Wars or it used to be Dead Space. But if I go to Ubisoft, I'm going there for Far Cry and Assassin's Creed, and that's what I'm going to Ubisoft for. It's okay for them to take risks occasionally on a new IP and see how it does, and that's how the industry works. But I think that if you can't afford to take a loss on a title, don't do it. Let Sony do it. Let someone like Sony would have picked up Unravel and put that out, and they would have somehow figured a way to make money off of it. You know, it's EA with their shitty business practices that causes them to lose money over these smaller projects, and I don't know. It just bugs me. And like you said, it is a little bit of like the rich guy thing for me as well, because I'm like not a fan of like people that show up in suits to things. But
you're not a fan of Phil Spencer, and he's not even that guy.
I like Phil Spencer more than I used to. I've admitted that on the podcast. Leave me alone. But like when EA come out and they do their whole like thing at E3 or whatever, like it's
EA
always so fucking forced and awful.
It is definitely a business presentation,
right?
More than it is a gaming presentation.
And and then Phil Spencer comes out and he's like, games, and like and they do all right with their presentation because that's what they're focusing on. They're focusing on the gamer and not the profit. And maybe Microsoft could afford to do that.
Also behind the scenes, they're focusing on profit.
But people would just like EA so much more if they just were honest about shit. And that's the problem.
That's why if you look at like Activision, I would compare it as similar to EA, where people just like to shit on Activision because Activision's done some stuff in the past.
Yeah, but that's more their history. Then they're not still doing that. You know what I mean?
I beg to differ. Have you looked at Destiny's their microtransactions and the backlash that got initially?
I haven't paid any attention to Destiny at all.
That's what I'm saying. So things like that. But look at Call of Duty World War II. You, along with a lot of other people, are like, I don't want jetpacks. I don't want this. Go back to the original.
And they did it.
And they did it. And look how well that was received. I would love to see, again, they're never going to do it, but I'd love to see, I guess if you looked hard enough, I could find it, but how much it cost to make that game. How much they made on that game and what their profit margin was. And then I would love to see Infinite Warfare, how much it cost to make Infinite Warfare. Because I have a feeling...
I bet it costs more to make Infinite Warfare.
I was going to say it's cheaper because they'd been making that technology already. A lot of those assets, the jetpacks and all that physics was already
They've been
made.
making World War II games since the fucking, 10 years ago.
But that's 10 years old. When's the last World War II game they made? What system? Exactly. That's my point. Yeah. So they have to go in and make one for the PS4 on a new engine and all that kind of stuff. So they have to learn how to
they could repurpose the end. They could just take the jetpacks off. They could still use the same.
I don't think it's as easy as no jetpacks. Like there's a lot of things you got to do.
I honestly think it is. I think they already have the essentials of a Call of Duty game are run and gun, right? You just need to have the shooting and aiming down, and you need to make maps, and that's it. Like, that engine doesn't change. The skin can change. You can take off the stupid jumping mechanics and just make it, okay, you can't jump now. You're a normal human being. You're a soldier. You know, change the guns out for World War II era guns, and the engine is essentially the same. It's mostly cosmetic changes that are making to it.
But it's also physics changes as well, because guns are going to act differently, fire differently. They got to feel different, that kind of thing. So there's more that goes into it.
I still don't think it's that big of a margin.
I think they would have. I mean, I have no basis on this. My gut feeling says it cost them less to make Infinite Warfare than it cost them to make World War II, because they had to go back and redo some of the physics and like the behind the scenes stuff that we don't see. That being said, I personally think World War II made more money. It generated more revenue. Clearly, because
they listened to the gamers.
Exactly. And who's gonna sell? Call of Duty is always gonna sell. Doesn't matter what format it's in, but it's gonna sell better in certain formats.
But they wanted it. Here's the thing, and again, it comes down to the ethics of it. Because Call of Duty, you're right, it's always gonna sell regardless. But you know, with franchise fatigue and things like that, you have to be very careful with how you're approaching it.
Because you can't make a World War II game every year.
You know, the interesting thing. Well, yeah, I mean that's why they started making all the Modern Warfare ones. But the interesting thing to me was that initially it wasn't going to be World War II. They actually wanted them to make Infinite Warfare? Yeah, Infinite Warfare 2. And that was the game that was pushed to be made. But then they turned around at a later date and said, people don't want this. The
developer making it now is not would have been the Infinite Warfare 2 people. That would have been 2 or 3 years.
That was but they're going down this path. Yeah, that was what I'm saying. Like this, like the thing they were talking about was doing sequels. Or maybe it was the other one, not Infinite, the one before. Fucking, I don't know.
There's too many Call of Duty games. Oh no, it's not Black Ops. It's the other one. Yeah, it's like there's another one in between.
So I think it was Advanced Warfare 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like. It's like someone at the company finally grew a fucking soul and just said, like,
even
this
if they
is not
did,
what people are asking.
I wouldn't have an issue if they did. Again, I don't know how many teams working on Call of Duty now. It used to be 3, but I'm gonna use.
It used to be 2.
I'm gonna use
Infinite,
2 right now because I have. Again, I don't know.
I think it's only.
But
it's still 2.
Say it's 2.
Yeah, Sledgehammer and
World War II.
No, Respawn.
Future game. World War II. Future game. I would be fine with that because you're getting 2 different demographics. Because there are people who like sci-fi, those space shooters, people who like the jump packs.
Buy Destiny.
But that's not the same thing as a Call of Duty game. Destiny is fucking broken, especially on PvP. Like, I don't think there's any... I don't think there's a PvP...
Titanfall.
Titanfall. The Titans were the issue in Titanfall. That's where people had the issue. So if Titanfall took the Titans out, you had a good shooting game.
I mean, it's still great, but...
Yeah. But, like, then with Halo, it's a console exclusive. So that's where you get in trouble there. Yeah. But I think nobody does PvP... Granted, the community's shit, but nobody does PvP gameplay like Call of Duty right now. I think
Battlefront is.
I think they are the best.
There.
Even that does not have the same.
Battlefield, sorry, not Battlefront.
Yeah, Battlefield, I would agree. I was like Battlefront, no, but I feel like from a PvP, that's their focus. They understand that's what's going to sell the game, and then they put on
the story mode is great.
The story mode,
yeah, you're right.
But the PvP is what sustains it.
People buy Call of Duty for the multiplayer. They don't buy it for single player. That's a happy bonus.
Yeah. So I feel like if they did that every other year thing, it would be way better. And the same thing I've said with sports games. I think EA should make sports games every 2 to 3 years and just give me a roster update for $20. Give me a DLC update.
Yeah, they're not making any money that way.
If they want to make games of service, if they want to make games of service. Let me make game. If I have no issue with games of service either, that's a whole different conversation.
Like the subscription.
Games of service is a game that you can purchase to continue going. Not like you get locked out, but like a prime example is I'm trying to think of I guess Elder Scrolls is a prime example. They have all the DLCs. You can continue to play those DLCs, but you still have whatever game you bought.
Right.
So I have no issue with that. I have no issue if say Destiny came out and said, hey. This was their plan, but base game Destiny, and then you just buy expansions on top of that. The WoW format. If you have a game that's doing really well and just build upon it for 4, 5, 6 years, maybe I've said for a console generation.
Well, that's what Destiny originally said they were going to do, and then they
fucked up. Yeah, it had some issues, but I have no issue with things like that because I have no issue paying for more stuff to do,
right?
Especially if that more stuff to do is stretched out far enough that because the concern there is you don't want to have like maps that people can't play. But then the way I look at it, like Call of Duty, if Call of Duty were to take that model, they would make World War II now. And then maybe next year they do a certain battle as a DLC that gets announced at E3. You can pay $40 for 7 battles or 6 battles or whatever it is to continue going on that game. I don't have an issue with that because the people who really love that game are going to buy that DLC. The people who are like, meh, aren't. And that's just the way it is. And you have to make a decision as a consumer.
That's an interesting point, though. I'd actually like to see an FPS, the scale of Call of Duty that was just like perpetually
going.
Yeah.
At some point, you obviously have to reboot it because technology and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but something like
like
PUBG,
for a console generation.
You know.
Yeah. I would love to see that kind of thing. I would love to see that for most games. There's very few games that does not make sense. Maybe story-driven games it doesn't.
I think it's the subscription things. I'm like having a seizure here. The subscription thing that puts a lot of people off.
I think if they did,
feel like they're paying for a million.
I think if they did 2 things. One, you should be. I have again DLCs, season passes. I have no issue with as well. If I know what I'm getting in it and it's worth my money, that's the thing. It's got to be worth your money. But I just feel like subscription services. So ESO, I think, is one of the best examples of doing both.
Yeah.
You can either spend $40,
granted more, buy exactly what you want, or just have everything.
Granted, Morrowind was slightly different because it was a different ball game. But for all the DLCs that have come out for the new dungeons, if you subscribe to ESO Plus, you get them. They're yours plus other perks, which I find worth it because I'm an ESO Plus subscriber now for about a year and a half. Never think about it. It just goes and does its thing, and I'm ready to go. But if you were to come in and say, hey, like you said, I just want this one DLC, the Dark Brotherhood. I don't care about
this is precisely
this
how
one
I
over
play
here.
ESO.
Yeah, and I can buy that for $30-$40 equivalent.
Yeah,
because they use in-game currency. But I would love that. Like, to me, that is the best way to do sustainable games. To do the cost projection there from a business hat is how much does it cost to make that expansion versus how much you're selling it for and what you're making back. So
the only downside to that is dividing the player base.
But again, if you're do it a year out, if the player base is still there playing that game, they're gonna buy it.
Sure.
If it's 3 months out, they're not. That's when you're dividing it more. So like the Battlefront 1, I think the division happened when it was okay, around the movie we're launching one, and then 3 months later, and then 3 months later.
Right.
That's where I have the issue with it because it's like, okay, now you are dividing your player base because you haven't had them time to kind of lapse and go to something else. Because right now, I told you, I'm stopped really playing Destiny because I'm waiting for the DLC. I'm gonna hop back in. I'm playing Assassin's Creed. At some point, I'll get tired of Assassin's Creed and jump to something else.
And Assassin's Creed will release a DLC.
Then I can always come back, and that's the thing. That's how I play Division. That's how I play a lot of games.
I'm not a big DLC guy. I'm just not. Like I'll only like. I don't know, like it's weird. Like it's very few DLC releases for me that are like worth it.
Division was one that fucking just like me.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck you.
I don't know. There's certain things that I think are worth it, and certain like with ESO, I picked up like Dark Brotherhood and stuff because like that's my favorite part of ESO. So
exactly.
But with like and BioShock had some good DLC with it, but like stuff like Assassin's Creed DLC, like I've never bought an Assassin's Creed DLC.
That fighting mythical beasts. You said
no, that
cool.
one sounds good. Yeah, but like I said, like normally like unless I only buy DLC if it's huge. Mm-hmm. Like if it's 2 hours,
that's what I'm saying.
I'm not
it's worth your money,
it.
or
but
if
like
it's experience
for Oblivion, which was pre-Skyrim, they released an expansion called the Shivering Isles, which was this amazing like area where everything was batshit crazy. And like some of the quests were stupid, and it was just so fun. But you know, you had like all these extra like weapons and monsters, and like a really great quest, and it was 30 hours of gameplay. So yeah, sure, I'm gonna drop $25 on that or $30 on that because I know what I'm getting my money's worth out of it.
Exactly.
But most DLC, it's like nowadays, especially, it seems like it's like $15-$20 for something that you're lucky if you get an hour out of it.
Again, as a concept, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think
it's
like anything else. It depends on how, like again, with like loot boxes or microtransactions, it's how you implement it.
Fucking psychopath, but like DLC for some reason never appeals to me.
Did you get the Frozen Wilds DLC? No, I heard it's real good. I've not.
I never finished the main game, so like I'll probably get it like once I'm done with the main game because that'll expand it in a good way. But I need to get back to Horizon. In fact, I may as well fucking start over because I have no idea where I am in that game. But yeah, that's one of the things that I'm like, I want to, but I don't play it enough to warrant it, and I move on really fast with games. As well,
especially with what we do.
Yeah,
but yeah, I wanted to bring up that the whole gist of this before we move on to the next section was I basically wanted to bring up gamers, good on you if you said you weren't going to buy the game, you didn't buy the game. Good on you. If you bought the game, that's your preference. If you got your money's worth, more power to you. If you think you're fine with it, more power to you. Again, I can't say firsthand because I've not played it. I've heard people on both sides of the argument. It's kind of like the PSVR argument of like, if you don't have the headset, people are yelling. If you do have the headset, you're like, wait, it's not that crazy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that situation. But I really do like this to me, and we've said it, and it's been building up. There's going to be a tipping point. And I think this will be the tipping point for a lot of things. Yeah, but I also think it'll only be the tipping point as long as people don't do it again.
Yeah.
So, and I hope when EA brings back the because again, I have no issues with microtransactions in general. If EA brings it back, fine. They're going to, as long as they bring it back and it's done in a way that doesn't break the progression system, doesn't break the game, more power to you. If it breaks the game, then I've got an issue. So
I would like to end by saying fuck EA.
Oh, see, I have no issue with EA. that's literally
You've been rambling. It's time to move on.
I wrote a
5 minutes now of rambling.
I wrote a thing that's like I think I literally wrote in my notes is like I don't want to be fuck EA. I don't want to say EA's bad.
No, you didn't, but I do. So yeah, that's why there's two of us.
But anyways,
so are you feeling cold?
A little. My toesies are cold.
Okay. So I'm going to warm you up a little bit with our great moments in gaming history section.
Red Bull.
I really need to actually record some of these so you can mix up the sound and make them sound cool. But our great moment.
We should get Bertrand to do it. He does that for a living or something.
All right, sure.
He said he's going to redo our intro song, right?
Yeah, what's Dave's mate to do it? The guy that does all the voiceovers. Yeah.
The guy going to his world.
We sidetrack. So great moments in gaming history is our segment this week, and what I decided to talk about was a very special moment in gaming history.
I've never played this moment.
You never played it?
I was too young.
That's okay. Yeah, I know.
It's too young.
I just thought you'd like to talk about it because it's a fun one. And that is, of course, I say of course, like you know what the fuck I'm going to say.
I do, because I read your note.
Hot coffee. So hot coffee will warm you up on a cold summer's day, but what it will also do is get you in a lot of trouble if you are a rock star. For those of you too young to remember, hot coffee was a mod that was available for the San Andreas game, GTA San Andreas, that also
it was not a mod for the game. The mod enabled access to it.
Yeah, it was base code that was modded in by PC users, and I think they managed to do it for the console users, real brief or something. It was in the original copies. It's actually been removed. The code was removed, but here's a little bit about the hot coffee mod for those of you that are unfamiliar. So, Hot Coffee is a normally inaccessible minigame in the 2004 video game Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, developed by Rockstar North. Public awareness of the existence of the minigame arrived with the release of the Hot Coffee mod, created for the Microsoft Windows port of GTA San Andreas in 2005. This mod enabled access to the minigame. The minigame portrays crudely animated sexual intercourse between the main character, Carl C.J. Johnson, and his chosen in-game girlfriend. The name of the mod is derived from the girlfriend's offer for her main character to come into her home for coffee, a euphemism for sex. Although the Hot Coffee minigame was completely disabled and its existence was only highlighted after the mod's release for the PC version on June 9th, 2005, the assets for the minigame were also discovered in both the PlayStation 2 and Xbox versions of the game, and people found ways to enable the minigame via console video game hacking tools. By the middle of July 2005, the minigame's discovery attracted considerable controversy from lawmakers and politicians, prompting the game to be reassessed with an adults-only rating by the US Entertainment Software Rating Board. They refused classification in Australia, resulting in its removal from sales.
Do you know why adults only is a death nail? Because they won't sell retail then. If it's an AO rating, places like GameStop, Toys R Us, whatever places don't sell retail, Best Buy.
An updated version of San Andreas has since been released with the minigame removed completely, allowing the game to regain its original rating. A patch for the original version of the game, Cold Coffee, was designed to counter-edit the script and disable the minigame and crash the game if one attempts to access it. But I wanted to talk about it because it was this huge controversy at the time, was this whole hot coffee thing. So what do you know about it? Because you said you kind of were familiar, but you hadn't ever played it. So
well, I was too young. So 2004, I would have been. That had to be middle school because that would have been 8th grade. So my parents knew about GTA, and I think this is probably where they heard about GTA because I remember I've told the story before, but I rented GTA from Blockbuster back when that was the thing to do, and my mom didn't know what GTA didn't know what GTA was at the time. I played it, the game crashed, so on and so forth. I had to go get it replaced, and she figured out what it was. But she found out about GTA from this story because it went mainstream news like pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, it's a big deal.
It was a big deal because adult only rating is a big deal, and as we know, people like to censor video games and have certain things in there. And I get that you have to be careful of what you do and do not allow in a video game, especially if you're aiming it towards gaming. And stereotypically is a younger audience when it comes to playing games. The older, I think that audience is now getting older. It's gearing more towards our age range, but there are people at the age of 13, 14 that are going to play these games. And my mom, I remember Halo was the first mature game I could play. And her reasoning for letting me play that game versus like Call of Duty or whatever was there was no blood.
And it's aliens as
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was her justification for it. And for a game like this, it shows like my mom is very open about talking about sex. Like she was one of those people like if you had a question you go to, she'd give you a straight answer, like no problem at all. But she also wanted to control how I learned about it and the things that I had, and not like in the way of like I don't know how to say it, but like not firm fist of like you can't do this, it's bad. Like she wasn't brimstone and fire type thing like this is bad. Right. It was more like I want to make sure you're getting the right information from the right places.
There will be consequences type thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's where kind of we didn't really talk because I didn't care about GTA at that point because I was too young. I was playing sports games and Mario. So, but I remember hearing about it. I heard about it at the time. I remember being on the news and not really understanding what was going on. And then later on, I heard about it when I started playing GTA, when I got old enough to play it and experience it. And I don't know,
you know what's so funny about this whole thing?
The fact that it's in the code, I think it's hilarious from the developer.
But the thing that's so funny about it to me is that like they're kicking up such a fuss about this stupid mini game, right? Which is like really crude. Like they said, it's like crudely animated. It's not even like really.
It wasn't meant to be in the game.
Yeah, it's like, not really sexual. Like,
and I'm sure
no one's gonna be jerking off to hot coffee. But but you can play that. You could pick up a hooker in this game, take her to an alleyway. The car will bump because she's having sex with you. Once she gets out of the car, you can beat her with a baseball bat and take your money back and drive over her on your way out of the alley. Somehow that doesn't bother anyone, but you get two crudely drawn animations just banging together. It's like, oh, that's too much. It's kind of the thing where like a lot of times in movies you'll see deaths off screen, or you'll see something where it's like it's hinted at but not shown that something happened, and that's where this comes in. Is like those are hinted at. I mean, obviously running somebody over with a car is not hinted at. You do that in the game. Don't do it in real life because you'll get in trouble. Hit and runs are bad, guys. Please don't do that.
But America, when it comes to sex, has always been more restrictive than a lot of other countries, and that's from my experience, from people I've talked to overseas. That's the truth. I mean, there used to be a show on G4. I don't know if you ever watched it. Was it G4? I think it was G4, called the International Sexy Lady Show.
I think you've talked about this before.
Yeah. So it's basically TV shows that were shown in other countries, maybe not necessarily in prime time, but like on primetime channels, so like 2, 4, 6, whatever, 8. Who do we appreciate? That would be on those channels that are considered too hot for TV here. So this would come on at like 11:30 at night and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't like they weren't having sex. It was just like, there's one I remember specifically. It was these ladies that be dressed in bikinis, and one of the games was these girls had on their nipples they had like, I guess, nails. I don't know. They're pointy that was sticking out of their bra, and these other girls had balloons that they had to pop. So they used the nails to. So you're bumping into each other to pop the balloons and like shit like that. I was like, this is hysterical.
It was just stupid shit.
Yeah. Stupid stuff like that I just found funny. But it doesn't surprise me that this got controversial because, again, America with sex is like, ooh.
It's so weird. Like,
but violence we're fine with.
Yeah, and then you can own a gun, you can go to war, you can join the army, but as soon as you mention a pair of boobs or something, America just loses its shit. And that is true, by the way. Like a lot of terrestrial television back home for me, like I think I've mentioned this before as well, but after 9 o'clock in the UK, it's they call it past watershed, and once watershed is over, then you can show whatever you want to.
It's like us with Skinamax, but Skinamax is like 11:30.
Well, yeah, but it's not all that. It's just like you're allowed to put that in there, and no,
Yeah.
it's like suddenly TV becomes HBO.
Well, it's
after
like
9
when the example I use is like when American Dad went from Fox to TBS. Fox was more restrictive because they're in more households. TBS was like, yeah, you can drop this word every so often, or you can do this, like change the story to do this action, and Fox would probably be against it because of where their audience is.
So here's a little bit about what happened with the controversy. The revelation of the minigame sparked a fair amount of controversy around Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, with some politicians firing harsh words at both the game's developer and the Entertainment Software Rating Board, the organization which establishes content ratings for video games in North America. It also rekindled the debate over the influence of video games in general, with new protests against several other games such as Killer 7, The Sims 2, and Bully. Fun story, people protest Bully before it came out because they thought it was going to teach people to be bullies.
Yep,
They
I saw
don't
that.
realize that you were being bullied in that game. Jack Thompson was one of the first to criticize the game for its hidden content, believing violent media is one of the main causes of violent crime in America, although I have no idea what that has to do with hot coffee. Thompson lashed out against Rockstar Games on several occasions for previous games that they have developed. U.S. Senator Hillary Clinton suggested that new regulations be put on video game sales. The ESRB conducted an investigation that ultimately changed the game's rating from mature to adults only 18+. Also, Congress passed a resolution to have the Federal Trade Commission investigate whether Rockstar intentionally undermined the ESRB by having the content in the game. In New York, a class action lawsuit was filed by Florence Cohen, an 85-year-old grandmother who purchased the game for her 14-year-old grandson.
First of all, M is 18. Just going to point that out.
Okay. According to the old rating of M, the game is typically considered inappropriate for this age. Cohen's lawsuit claimed that Rockstar Games and Take-Two Interactive, the publisher of the game, are guilty of deception, false advertising, fraud, and abuse. The accusation of deception is based on the change from M rating to AO, meaning, according to the lawsuit, that the original rating was a deceptive practice. A protest group known as the Peaceaholics organized a protest on August 4th, 2005 at Rockstar's headquarters. The group demonstrated against San Andreas as well as the upcoming game Bully, the latter due to fears that the content could inspire children to become bullies themselves. Which, again, that's just like prime example of people protesting something they have no fucking idea what they're protesting. If you played Bully, you know it's not about that at all.
I mean, with
But yeah, it was a big deal.
with something like this, I don't have an issue with them looking into it, because I think every so often we should have checks and balances on things. Like we brought up the conversation with VR, like how scary is that going to be in
Coming
in
up
real
next,
life?
that's my segment.
So, I mean,
Glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I didn't even look at that. Yeah. But that's the thing, is like how you have to have checks and balances every so often on things like this. But like I
mean, it was hidden code though. That was the thing. Like it wasn't even supposed to be there. Hackers made it happen.
Somebody had to put that code in to make it happen.
But
so
they
it
just left
wasn't
it
the
as dead
game.
code.
The question I would have for the developers, which I don't know if they've ever come out and said, would be, I'm guessing if you took that code out, because it's not as easy, again, as just plucking a level and be like, gone. If you took that code out, what happened to the rest of the game?
Yeah, did it like break something?
Yeah, so
I mean, obviously they fixed it with
like
call copy, but
obviously they're trying to make it to where they didn't take the code out. They made it so it's harder to access it.
well, they made it so it crashed the game.
But they didn't take the code out.
Yeah, that's right. I suppose.
So
like,
they made it so it broke.
there must have been something pretty serious about that code. That
So that's like the way I look at this situation was it was something that was not supposed to be seen. I'm sure they probably thought about putting it in the game initially, and maybe they had backlash beforehand. It's like, ooh, we probably shouldn't do that, or maybe they just did it for a fucking laugh. Who knows?
Yeah.
Like the animations are.
It's Rockstar. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they did it for shits and giggles, to be honest. And Rockstar to me have always been kind of like the South Park, like the Matt and Trey of the video game world. Like every game they release.
I mean, what
the
you just
GTA
said
games.
is a perfect example, because how many people go, oh, it's South Park? How many people go, oh, it's Family Guy? Oh, it's Rockstar. Like,
Right.
oh, it's Bethesda for glitches. Like that's just becomes the mentality. And what I think's good now, well, at least for me, if I was take me now with the Rockstar knowledge we have and put me 10 years ago in the past, my mom, I think, would be more knowledgeable of what Rockstar is and what it entails, and we'd be a little more lenient, or a little more probably heavy-handed with it. Like, again, I was not allowed to play those games, but she didn't know what those games were.
Yeah, but that's the other side. Like this 85-year-old lady that bought it for a 14-year-old. It was a mature game. It was for an 18-year-old anyway. So you don't have a leg to stand on because you were buying it for someone that was 4 years younger than the
recommended
age anyway. So really, like, and and I often think about the GameStop employees and stuff. Like, how do they deal with that? Because like kids are fucking vicious, man. Like,
Oh, I got games I shouldn't have played. I got
exactly, but like, you know, those poor bastards that have to like try and determine how old you are.
My mom asked
or,
me if I wanted Playboy one day.
tell your. Fair enough.
She's like, I was like, you paying for it? She's like, nope, you are. I was like, nope, I'm good.
But like, it's just, I don't know. It's like I always felt bad for him because I was just like, how do you judge and how do you gauge? Like, because as a gamer, you want everyone to experience it, and you kind of assume that most people are sane and they're not going to just suddenly snap and try and, you know, murder prostitutes if they play GTA. But, you know, also there are probably some things that should be protected from children. So it's, I'm pretty open to like, I mean, I would let my kids play
Again,
if they wanted to.
I think my mom, from my experience, my mom did it correctly for me. Of a lot of the controversial topics she would come in and we would talk about. And she had no issue with me. Like, there's a show that used to be on HBO called Real Sex.
Yeah.
Do you know that show?
Yeah.
So she knew I watched that show. She was well aware I watched that show. But she also understood, like, we had an understanding that, like, this is fake. There are certain parts that are real or not. And you have that conversation. That's what it all comes down to is, like, again, not to get political, but, like, gun control. There's people who are, like, dead set against guns. I stand somewhere where I don't think outright bans of guns are wrong, because I know friends who hunt and who are responsible with their children, but there are other things involved with that. Again, it's all education on a lot of it. I mean, there's some, again, not going too political with that, but that's how I look at the situation is as long as you educate somebody on a situation and they have the knowledge they need to make a good choice for their children, you can raise your child however the hell you want.
Yeah.
How you raise your child will have consequences down the road. So that's kind of how I look at it. Is like that 14-year-old could be mature enough to play a mature game. We don't know, but you can't then say, "Hey,
Sorry,
you're immature now. That's adult only."
I feel like it's media scapegoats this type of shit a lot though. Like a lot of these kids, like there was a famous case in England. It's called the Jamie Bulger case, where these kids had watched Child's Play. I can't remember which. It was like Child's Play 2 or 3. They're the Chucky movies, you know.
Oh,
Yeah, and
I've never seen those.
They had kidnapped some kid from like a department store or something, and they did horrific things to this poor kid, and ended up basically like throwing him on a train track. This kid was like 8, and then when they questioned the boys about it, they said that, you know, before all this stuff had happened, they'd watched Child's Play 2 or Child's Play 3, and they got banned from England for a while. It came back.
It was like Marilyn Manson gets blamed for stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, it's that whole, like, at what point do you just scapegoat something that...
Well, that's like, do you remember, was it last year or 2 years ago where the crazy clowns were going around stabbing people? It's like, do you boycott clowns?
That was fucking amazing,
that was
by the way.
terrifying.
It was so good.
That was terrifying.
Those clowns, man. God. All right, so that's Hot Coffee, and we thought we'd talk about it a little bit because that's one of my favorite moments in gaming history. Just that whole controversy was so fucking hilarious to me, and good on Rockstar for being kind of cool about the whole thing, despite the fact their company was.
I've said it many times that I feel like every game should have a right to be made, and then from there, based on feelings and stuff like that, obviously rating systems are a good thing to have. The fact that ESRB exists is a good thing, because we used to not have that.
Yeah.
And the fact that
no one wants no regulation on things like this, but it's smart regulation. That's the problem. Is what do you deem as being appropriate and inappropriate?
And it's all subjective.
There's such a it's like 50 Shades of Grey or whatever. Like there's so many different like
shades of gray
that like there's
something
no
you deem acceptable, I might deem unacceptable for
precisely.
somebody to watch or play or whatever it may be.
All right, so speaking of which, and you brought it up skillfully, this is the last segment for the day because we're running along today. VR morals and ethics. Now we can enact murder in a virtual world. And my thought was, we had discussed this on a couch conversation back when that was what our podcast was, with Jordan, and we kind of brought up about, before PSVR came out, we talked about like what that was going to look like for people that perhaps,
all that kind of stuff.
that perhaps like we're not necessarily mentally all there, and that you're talking about like video games influencing people to do certain acts and things like that, like VR making that obviously that much more
feel real.
Now we're doing that. Like we have games where you can shoot people in VR, you can blow their heads off in games like Until Dawn, you can, I mean, admittedly they're clowns, but still
clowns are people too, Tom.
Going back to, well, not killer clowns. But now, more recently, obviously, Skyrim. Skyrim is a game that almost encourages you to fuck with other people, and you can, in fact, harm children and animals and anyone. Like, literally, one of my missions was to kill the leader of an orphanage, so I went right in there, arrowed her in the head, and then the kids...
And then everyone got mad at you?
Yeah, everyone got mad at me. The kids were dancing around in joy, and then I peaced out. But it's kind of like... even though Skyrim is not exactly what I would call realistic, it's a fantasy world. You have like multiple races in there, but they're still human.
What if it's to take a GTA VR? It's kind of the example.
Right. That's the thing, because obviously that's coming, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, if VR takes off the way that it's taking off, we're going to eventually see someone try to create some kind of a GTA game, first person, where you can do whatever. I mean, they already have that. Was it the American Dream or whatever game coming out, which is just like you have to use guns to do everything. Like you have to use guns to make toast and stuff. Mm-hmm. So they're getting to kind of that weird stretchy point where like they're starting to cross a few boundaries, and you have games like The Inpatient that's coming out where that's going to be a bit of a headfuck too. So like I kind of want to revisit the conversation around mental stability and the act of murder and things like that, and not just murder but like torture, whatever,
different things,
anything in VR, and how we feel about it now that it's actually here and now that it's a reality. So
not virtual reality.
Yeah. So what are your kind of opinions on it? Like, do you think that what we have so far is like been okay? Do you think there's anything that's crossed the line already? Do you think there needs to be some regulations put in place? Where are you at?
So I stand behind what I pretty sure I said before is every game is allowed to be made. Every game should be made. It's up to responsible adults, especially if you're a parent, to control what their kid has. If you're an adult, you can do whatever you want, in my opinion, but at that point you're going to have consequences for what you do. So if you decide to play Skyrim in VR and then you're like, I'm going to go murder an orphanage, then there's consequences for that.
Yeah.
Then the question is the morality of like, do you stop people from doing that? But if it's a one-off, is it that type thing? Do I think right now it's an issue? No. I think graphics are not there yet. I think when it becomes more realistic, it'll become more of an issue.
That was kind of my thought.
There's still a disconnect that you're like, oh, I'm playing a game. But when it becomes photoreal or becomes more realistic, then it's going to be a bigger issue. I do think that at some point in the near future, we're going to have an ESRB type meeting for VR. I think there will be different regulations for virtual reality games than there are for normal games,
because of
flat
the nature
games,
of immersion.
because of what it is. So, or even if it's just like, again, the example I've used before is I would love to go to World War II, and maybe you have a torture scene of Hitler torturing somebody or a gas chamber or whatever it may be. I would be very uncomfortable with that, and a lot of people I know would be very uncomfortable with it. If that's say you're playing you say that, but there's people out there that would not.
The Nazis.
But say you're playing Call of Duty World War II and they have a scene like that.
Yeah.
If you have the option to skip it, kind of like they did, was it Modern Warfare 2?
No Russian.
Yeah. I was like, wait, no. Oh, no Russian. If you have the ability to skip that, if it gives you a warning before that happens and says, hey, this is what you're about to get into, I think that's the best way for the industry as a whole to do it, but I still think it falls on to the individual parents, people, whoever's playing the game, to understand what they're getting into and or what their kids are getting into. I think the onus,
kind of a disclaimer before you get to that area.
Like, hey, this might be fucked up.
Yeah.
It's like every time you play VR, it always says, hey, you might get sick. If you get dizzy, take the headset off.
Yeah.
Same thing. It's just instead of being a physiological thing, it's a psychological thing.
Yeah.
And I will never, ever, 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 ever change my mind that, again, every sort of media, everything should be allowed to be made. Obviously, based on audience and all that kind of stuff is going to dictate kind of what makes money and what doesn't. Vote with your wallet. But I do think everything should be allowed to be made because what you think is wrong might be different than what I think is wrong. And
what about like things that are actual hate speech? Like, let's say there's a game that is just flat out like...
I think it should be allowed to be made if it comes with a proper rating.
Even like stuff that tackles like racism and stuff. Like the whole game is just like you killing black people.
Why would you pretend it doesn't exist? That's my take on it. Because if you start censoring one thing,
no, I'm not saying like that you're pretending that doesn't exist in real life. I'm just saying like there's like hate speech has always kind of been the I guess the separation.
But what is your hate speech versus somebody else's hate speech?
Well, I think hate speech is largely defined by the law already. We don't have to define hate speech. Hate speech is, you can get arrested for hate speech, right? So it already has, like, there's certain things that are out there. There's already regulations on a lawful front of what it was considered to be hate speech. But, like, if we're talking about, like, I don't know, like Westboro Baptist Church. Let's just say Westboro Baptist Church made a virtual reality game, and it was all about killing gay people and, like, doing the Lord's work and whatever. Like, that game, does that...
It has a right to be made.
You think so?
Everything, because once you start censoring one thing, you're getting to that snowball effect of, like, oh, I'm offended by this, oh, I'm offended by that, oh, I'm offended by that, and that'll just keep snowballing to where it's just going to chop these things off. I get what you're saying. I understand what you're saying with that, but I'm concerned from a censorship, because I'm very much a South Park style man where it's either all or nothing. Because if you start shipping what you want out of it, and it's obviously it's based on each individual publisher and developer and whatever they want to put into it.
But South Park would never purposely create an episode where they were demeaning. Let's say they were just dropping, like, the N-bomb left, right, and center. Like they've like joked about it. Like they had that one Nagger episode where he's just supposed to fill in the blank or whatever, but like but that type of thing, like even South Park,
so
who have a very very low line that they draw for this type of thing, draws a line occasionally.
How's that any different than the controversy with World War II right now then?
What controversy?
With you have the black men hanging.
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, there's black men hanging in Call of Duty World War II, and it's caused a little bit of backlash.
Historical difference though.
But yeah, but again, you're picking and choosing. I'm going to stand behind my it's all or nothing type thing, because if you
you just have a libertarian viewpoint, and that's perfectly fine. Like I'm not demeaning your viewpoint.
If you go in and say, hey, I don't want Westboro Baptist, but maybe the Westboro Baptist people are like, I don't like this group of people,
right.
Like that's when you get back and forth.
I get it. I know what you're trying to say. I get what you're trying to say. I mean, I think there is lines. I think that
there's consequences for everything.
Well, yeah, there's definitely consequences. I think the lines pre-exist within the guidelines of the law now as we see hate speech, but I think that it's definitely a weird.
Because what's the difference between making a game where you have the comedic? I'm going to use the redneck comedic relief that is the stereotypical white supremacist versus having that as a main character. That person's still in the game.
Yeah.
And we tend to get a joke out of it.
It's
why
a
laughing
weird...
At it? And that's where my stance comes in, is like, how do you can't really
pick
and choose. Yeah. That's where my stance comes from.
No, I totally get it.
So
I lean more towards the sign of kind of trying to remove hate speech from this type of thing. But then, like you said, who decides what's hate speech and what's not? I guess, it's a difficult one. But when it comes to, like, virtual reality in particular, let's move away from the idea of, like, hate speech and things like that, but more about, let's talk about actual murder, okay? So when do you remember Manhunt when that came out?
Yep.
Right? And there was a huge controversy with
it's one of the, like, 70 games that can't be streamed on Twitch.
Right. So Manhunt had a Wii version that came out. And there was a huge controversy about that because, Wii is obviously motion control based, and what they would make you do, and I fucking love them for it, was they would, like, if you were using, like, a garrote to, like, kill someone, you'd have to use the nunchucks and, like, garrote somebody, right? You have to make those motions. So, is there, like, for that type of a thing, like for you actually having to perform not just like Call of Duty, like, headshots, but for like assassin level, like hitman, like face to face.
Because it's no different than Call of Duty headshots. You're killing somebody either way. It's just more personable when you stab somebody, obviously, than it is with a gunshot.
I think that Call of Duty, though, hides behind the banner of being a military shooter, because, like, that's the military do that. That's a real thing that happens. And I know that assassins are real too, but, like, I think there's maybe a difference between feeling like you're a part of the military protecting America from whatever
threat
versus sneaking up behind someone and ripping their neck off. Like,
see, my stance is it's still all or nothing. Like, in that instance, it's just like GTA. Again, if we use GTA as if GTA 5 VR drops tomorrow, and you can be Franklin and you can go shoot anybody, I see that no different than if you can stab somebody in Manhunt, or if you can do anything like that. Like, I have no issue with that.
I think murder is murder is murder.
Yeah, murder's murder. And again, my stance is more of informing the person of what they're getting into, informing the parent what they're buying for their kid, and it is up to publishers and the platform, the console platform in specific, because they control a lot of things of what goes on their platform. PC is a little bit harder because it's more of a Wild West, but on console specifically, it's up to Microsoft to say, hey, this is a game that's coming out. We want to make sure you are aware of what's being played on our console because it could have backlash to us.
Yeah.
And that, again, it's more information than anything else. And then from there, you make the decision of, yes, I do, no, I don't. That being said, if there was a situation where, say, there was a hate speech game that comes out and it rallies 100,000 people to go do these things, that's when you would have then, it sucks because you have to have a reaction to it. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse because, again, the whole censorship thing.
Do you have that viewpoint from a libertarian perspective, or is it from an art perspective?
A little bit of both. I think, again, art is, I think art I have the same feel as libertarian perspective because I think anything should be allowed to be made. That's why, like, with Wolfenstein games, Hitler's not in the game and the swastikas are not in the game. But they're in every other region because the swastika is illegal in Germany. And that's the country saying, hey, we don't like this. That's not the publisher or anybody of that's a, like you said, a law thing. That's not a subjective thing. This is a thing we've all agreed is not good for our country. That, I think, is kind of, I guess that's where my line would be. But yeah, it's true for both. I think everything is all or nothing because once you start pruning the tree, you'll just get the prunes you want, and then the prunes you want are different than the prunes somebody else wants, and you've got issues going on there.
Do you think it's more dangerous to free speech as a whole to allow for policing of this? Is that kind of it? Like, because if you, like you're saying, like if you, like one person's hate speech is not necessarily another person's hate speech, do you think that it leads to this kind of this deterioration of the First Amendment and kind of like your right to free speech?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say.
I don't have to agree with you.
Yeah.
But you can say it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's what is it, Voltaire? I think it's like I may not agree with you, but I'll defend you to my right.
Death, the right to say it.
Yeah. And that's how I feel. That's kind of what my belief system tends to boil down to when it comes to this kind of thing is if to me, over censorship is more dangerous than under censorship. Because if you start over censoring, then you have control going to a certain group of people that control then can force their will on those people.
Watches the watchman.
Yeah. So that's where I kind of step in and it's like, I'd rather have more hands-off approach until something happens. Then I think we need to refine something.
The problem is when something happens, it's too late at that point. It's reactionary.
Correct. But you don't know something's going to happen until it happens.
That's true.
So that's the other thing is like if you preemptively, let's say, again, using the example of I don't think sex should be in a game. That's not my belief, but I'm just saying as an example. Somebody doesn't think sex should be in a game.
I don't think it should be in movies either. It's boring as hell.
Cool.
Keep it to porn.
Sex shouldn't be in a game. Cool. Somebody else thinks the F-bomb shouldn't be in a game. You shouldn't have the word fuck in a game. Somebody believes that, let's say, unicorns are a mythological creature that they don't believe in. They shouldn't be in a game. That's where you start getting these things of like, well, where does the buck stop on that type thing? So I don't know. I'm very much, and I understand I'm very much open to everything. But if, again, say there's a white supremacist game that comes out, or God forbid Far Cry 5 comes out and it has some weird twisted thing to it and it rallies a group of people, then I think we have to look at that situation and say, what caused this to happen? And is there anything we can do to either inform people to make sure they're aware of what happens? Or is there some sort of law we need to make? Because if it becomes a public safety issue, then there's going to be a law that gets made. That's the
concern, isn't it? Like in terms of like ethics and morality, especially in virtual reality, is that it is reactionary. So let's say like we all know at some point in the future there's going to be a news headline that
somebody's gone down,
that someone that was doing something in virtual reality decided to go ahead and do it in the real world and they murdered a bunch of people or whatever it might be. So I guess
somebody took a shit on somebody else's chest because they did it in South Park VR.
So, you know, it's kind of the concern, I guess, is like how far do you let it go before something like that happens? I mean, it's also a mental health issue because, like, I mean, to bring it back to the gun debate and everything, like, guns are tools. Like that's what they are. You know, I'm anti-gun. You're kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, guns are tools essentially. The guns themselves don't kill people. People kill people, right? I mean, sure, if they didn't have the gun, they wouldn't kill them. But
they'd find another way.
Yeah, you know. So
if you want to get the job done, you'll get the job done.
Sure.
Just less.
But the regulation that comes in there, though, is like, okay, so if we can't take a country like, and even though it's happened in Australia where they've been successful with amnesty, in a country like America, I don't think you can. I don't think you can take guns out of this country
because so ingrained.
They're so ingrained. They've been ingrained since the beginning. So what do you do instead? Well, you temper your expectations. You say, okay, no assault rifles, nothing that can kill a room full of people in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
You know, because when you said, like, if you're going to kill someone, you're going to do it anyway, but you're going to kill a lot less people with a knife in a big room than you would with an assault rifle. So, like, there's, you know, it's that kind kind of rules and regulations.
It's the refinement.
Yeah, it's the refinement.
But to me,
like,
you have
what is kind of acceptable and what is not acceptable, and where is the root cause of the problem if it should occur.
And the way I look at that is you won't know what is until something happens.
Right.
With, like, specifically, again, gun control is, I feel like we've had enough instances that's like something needs to change. But, like, pre 9/11, most people didn't think about airline safety.
Yeah.
And then this thing happened, and look where we are now. And I have opinions on that. I think part of it's just to show, but part of it is they confiscate stuff that's not supposed to be on airlines. But that was not in our mind until something happened.
Right.
There's going to be something that goes down that's going to be like, oh shit, that sucks, and oh shit, that could have been prevented. And there's always hindsight and everything, but you won't know until it happens. You can stop as many people get on airplanes as possible, but you don't know what their intentions are a lot of times until they do the actual act. Because it's the concept of somebody trying to commit suicide via car. So the philosophy is you're in your car, you're going full speed to go off a cliff. Right before you go off the cliff, they say about 85% of people hit the brakes because they're trying to stop it. That 15% though are successful. Where's the 15% and what are they going to do? That's kind of where it comes down to. So
interesting. So that was a deep topic. Sorry, it wasn't supposed to go that deep. It's been a good show today, though. I've had some good conversation. I really enjoy it. So we of course want to know your opinion on all these matters. So how do you feel about Battlefront 2 and the EA debacle that's kind of been going through there? Are you on the side of Keegan and cheering on the gamers for actually making a difference or a dent rather in EA's wallet, or do you not care? Do you think that the game is fine just as it is? It's not a big deal and all that kind of stuff. Were you present for Hot Coffee? Do you remember the controversy? Did you ever play Hot Coffee? If you did, then please post in the comments and let us know how it was. I don't think I ever actually played it, but of course I'm sure it's hilarious. And of course, where do you stand on the ethics and morality of VR and things like murder and, you know, nasty stuff in VR or video games in general? But I think virtual reality is where it's really going to hit its peak,
especially when it becomes photoreal.
Yeah, when it becomes photorealistic, I think we're in a lot of trouble. But at this point, it's like you said, I think we're kind of okay for a while at least, until something happens, and then I'm sure we'll see something happen for that.
Yep.
But thank you so much for joining us on episode 48 of the Level 2 podcast. We appreciate all of your time and attention, and we love you guys so much. Any last words?
As always, nope.
Didn't think so. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. As always, welcome to the second level. Bye.
It ain't no game, but they saying welcome to the second level.